What is up, guys? Wraith here, Graybearded Gaming Society, coming back at you. We are at it again. This time we're going to pick up where we discussed last time. We're going to take a quick tour down memory lane on the other side of the world, and we're going to go check out a little bit of CrushBone action. Now, I know, technically, as Dark Elf, probably should leave the place alone because I'll wreck some of the Indigo Brotherhood faction, but as I said when we started this whole thing off, really just don't care about being too popular. You know, in this case, gonna go beat up a couple of orcs, see what kind of trouble we can get into, see what kind of good times we can have. So let's take off, shall we? Alright guys, we are here. We are in CrushBone. We are the only people in CrushBone, which is kind of to be expected. Like I said, the servers kind of had its heyday, but that's kind of good for us. One thing I did not know, I should say, is that we are actually not even KOS these guys. They've got enough faction out of the gate that when we first walk in, we're not even KOS, which I honestly did not know that. So let's see how fast we can wreck that faction. I'm curious kind of what the zone experience modifier is going to be here. I imagine it's probably going to be pretty good. Befallen was pretty good, and this is one of those zones that, let's see. Then we got a dark blue here. I mean about a percent, but he was only a dark blue. That is one thing that's always been kind of funny, is like some of these guys are already, we got some blues, we've got some grays, which of course, when, the video from traveling just on our way in, we actually had, bigger mobs outside, which I actually thought the mobs were bigger in here. And obviously, we go around this corner over here, and this is the one thing we can do, just as part of the tour, which is funny. Anybody who remembers, been in this zone for a long time, you get your standard little orcs running through here, a little flag spot. Little groups used to be through here all the time. They kind of pull through this courtyard. Then you got the back corner here, which I believe was where the orc slavers were, I believe. Yeah, here we go. And most of these centurions are a little bigger. Most of these guys are blue. There's an even. There's my pet. See if we can run it. There we go. So we got a slaver, and he's actually a little yellow to us. And I want to say, had some little guys in here as well. Yeah, the slavers, and of course the slaves that they've got busy going to work up there. Again, we kind of have our choice of where to mess around in here if we're gonna do it. Anywhere we go, I mean, obviously our faction's gonna be pretty good to start with, which again is just really weird to me. I don't believe I've ever had a character who could just get in here and walk in. You know what? While we're here, before we even start any fights, and before we get to, well, why don't we go and shake hands with the king? Good old Emperor Crush, and we can see if the ambassador from the Dark Elves, Devin, is actually up and in the castle. So a very long time ago, of course, I won, and even when the server like this was new, like this zone would have been, be packed. You'd have people camped right outside the castle, inside the castle. The Trainer Hill, we can hit that one on the way by. Let's see. So we got some Legionnaires. They still love me. Everything's great. We're gonna be able to walk right in. It's like we're just an invited guest right here into the castle. Avoid the little water trap that everybody likes to fall into. Forever and ever ago, this was such a great camp for experience. It was also a very tricky camp to break into. As you can see, a lot of these guys are super close together. You're going to pretty much guaranteed to get 2 at the door, sometimes 3. You know, if you're not careful, you're going to end up with this whole wave of guys. And this was one of the first zones a very long time ago where I learned the hard way just exactly what a train to zone really was. I jumped in the zone the first time on my little enchanter. Thought I was pretty cool. I'd been doing pretty good outside, and everybody's like, CrushBone is the place to go. And a friend of mine who was a wood elf warrior and my high elf enchanter decided we would come here and we would get some duo action going on. And we zoned in, also keeping in mind we're talking close to 20 years ago. You know, and not everybody was on fiber connections, not everybody was on really nice DSL connections. A lot of us were on dial-up connections. Everything was slow to zone. Nothing was all that fast to go through. We zoned into the zone. We walked out to the end of that first little hallway, and the just starts blasting through the main chat box. Train to zone. Before I can even ask, what does that mean? I am run over. Absolutely run over and stormed under by pretty much everything in this room. And we died just about instantaneously. The handy thing at least is that we were bound, you know, at the lift in there in Kelethan. But that was my first experience with truly a train to zone. We got totally run over by orcs. And I don't even think the big guy was with them that particular night. It was just the Legionnaires and the oracles from here. Because if you sneak behind the throne, normally there's a guy right in here somewhere. It's actually typically stealth or invis, and you run up here, and there we go. We got an oracle. We have Emperor Crush himself, who's while he's glowers dubiously, we can still walk right in and say hi. And Ambassador Devin, of course, who we are totally indifferent to. Of course, he has nothing that he wants to say to us, but of course, one of the other things, this guy right here, he was the scourge of this zone for so long. Because while he is not actually the ruler of this place, he's typically spawns in as the biggest mob in the whole zone. Of course, famous back in the day for the little dagger that he would drop that everybody kind of wanted, especially low-level rogues. You know, he has a really low chance. Well, I should say, I never actually looked up the statistics of or the rarity, I should say, of the item itself. However, you know, probably the nicer loot in the zone, I would say, was probably his dagger. And then you had, of course, Emperor Crush would drop a chess piece, which was on, I guess I say, he dropped the Dragoon Dirk, which again, on classic servers, old school servers, was a pretty good weapon. I remember it being pretty quick, and I believe it had like some plus dexterity to it, which was nice. And of course, you know, Emperor Crush over here would drop on occasion the Dwarven Ringmail Tunic, I believe was the name of it, which was not fantastic, but pretty good armor. Had some early magic resist, which was something you didn't see often. But when these two got loose in the zone, man, they would just wreak havoc upon any small group. If you didn't get out of the way, they would just steamroll right through you. It was hard to land spells on them, hard to get them under control. They would really put a hurting on you. And there was so many trains coming out of this room, people trying to break it in. You thought you were cool outside until you walked in there, and the whole thing changed. Then you had the sneaky spawns right in the corner. One of the other bigger guys in the zone. Doesn't look like he's up at the moment. I don't remember him wandering. He might. But right around in here somewhere, you had, and maybe one of these guys might be a placeholder, you had the Orc Warlord, who was another pretty tough guy, and he would smear groups pretty much by himself because he spawned in pretty big. And that cat was quite the handful. Of course, I'm not going to be able to dig around over here too much because those guys, of course, want to have words with me because they're all ready to attack as opposed to coming in here as you know, one of the local elves where they actually kind of like you. But unfortunately, so as I'm seeing in the spots where you'd be able to do stuff, these guys are kind of lower conning than I expected. To be quite honest with you, I thought they'd be a little bit bigger. And while, like I said, I'm not necessarily worried about the faction. It's for what we would be able to accomplish here. I'm not quite sure it's worth it. Like I said, we taste tested the one little guy there, and of course, while we're here, no trip to CrushBone is complete without scaling the hill to say hi to the trainer, and he is up. Of course, he was very much famous for dropping the shield. So people would constantly be camping the trainer for the shiny brass shield, which was a pretty good shield back in the day. I mean, again, remembering this is well before any, of the Defiant armor, well before in a lot of cases people could really even twink yet. Having a shield with any kind of stats was a pretty big deal. And like I said, that shield I believe was magic resistance. Plus it was a light source, which was pretty cool. This was another contested camp. This one was prized by a lot of folks because people could hold it by themselves. It wasn't quite as difficult to break. Once you did, you had room to kind of mess around with on the sides, and people would kite around and root rot, etc. Of course, the trainer always being the biggest guy. Got a little bit of a range on him he could spawn through. But unfortunately, I was hoping these guys would actually be a little bit bigger, to be honest with you. Because some of the areas where the mobs are in a good spot for us really are a little bit more kind of group friendly than we're kind of looking to do. We might poke around here or there a little bit, but not quite sure we're going to get a lot done. It was definitely worth coming out here just to see. It's been so long, again, since we've been in these places. Because, like I said, right now, I mean, we're still, we're level 9. I'm exactly where I was when we took off from Befallen. Nothing has changed there. And, that was kind of a difficult spot right in this little area, because this is when you would typically start grouping, try to get 9, 10, 11, you'd be in front of the castle. Now you're starting to pull some Legos in the group. Eventually you'd actually work your way inside, hopefully to get that throne room group and camp it all night long and hope to pull, a couple levels into the teens before you would strike out. But just not quite sure. Unfortunately, this is gonna be worth it. So again, maybe a little bit of a wasted trip. However, a little stroll down memory lane, and the fact that we could walk in and just take the absolute tour, again, is surprising to me. So many of my characters back in the day, of course, were on the friendly elf side, wood elves, high elves, and even half elves, because once you start one character kind of in one area, you're not necessarily stuck there, but it made life a little bit easier back in the day. And but with that, then I think we've pretty much toured the zone. Except I'm not quite sure it's going to be worth picking too many fights here. So we're going to be able to, it's in areas of blues and still some grays. And yeah, we might be able to pull yellow here or there, but just not quite sure the battle's going to be worth it. I was kind of hoping for a little more. So we will probably try to sneak back over to our little home stomping ground and beat up on the orcs there, because the orcs outside of Nectalos Forest are actually bigger than most of the ones here that we can deal with. Might have a slightly easier time breaking them apart, say, than we would trying to mess with the Legionnaires here. So I think we might do that and try to knock out a little bit more experience. Again, we're getting close. We're getting close, right? Trying to get level 12, fight with a little bit of style, travel a little bit more, because one of the things that really will help out there that we've kind of missed out on so far is just having the spell Bind Affinity, where we can bind in some random places, keep ourselves close, so if things do go totally sideways, we're not running quite as far back. But 0 for 2 on the last 2 rounds of adventures. So we'll work back over next, try to get some experience from the orcs there. But again, a nice tour all the way through town, welcomed right into the keep itself of Emperor Crush, shook hands, said hi to Devin. Like I said, hopefully next time we'll have another level or 2. We can show some little bit more combat. This time it's just a trip down memory lane. But I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed it, if nothing else, for the guided tour without combat of CrushBone, which I'm not sure most people have seen. But having said that, like I said, hope to see you guys next time. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you next time.